Okay, all right. For more analysis, I'm joined right now by Democratic strategist and Trump supporter Harlan Hill and syndicated radio host Chris Hahn, along with Washington Times reporter Charles Hurt. So good to have all you here. Chris, I'm going to start with you. What's the excuse this time?
I don't know that there's any excuse. And, you know, to answer your question, what should she do when she goes out there? Say, look, I welcome the sunlight onto this. I don't think I did anything wrong, and I think the American people should have a full accounting on what happened there. And I think she will. And I don't think the American people 11 days from now are going to change their mind, and I think they're going to continue to vote for Hillary Clinton.
Any idea what's taken so long, Chris? I mean, her plane arrived there in Cedar Rapids quite a while ago, but we're still waiting and waiting.
When I worked for Senator Chuck Schumer, we always knew to add 45 minutes to any Clinton arrival. So this is not unusual, and it probably has nothing to do with this.
All right, Charles Hurt, how does this affect people that, you know, were in the middle, weren't sure which way they were going to vote, maybe didn't like the idea of a Clinton in the White House, but then they found themselves not liking the idea of Trump in the White House? Will it change or sway any of those undecided voters?
I think absolutely. Here in the closing days, you could see a good number of people who are either not particularly fond of either candidate. I mean, this so fits perfectly into what everybody thinks about the Clintons and what people don't like about the Clintons, and I could absolutely see it having some impact. But that's going to be offset by the fact that, you know, we've already had millions of people cast ballots before this happened, and that's what I find so amazing about this decision.
I agree with you. I mean, think about it. Here we are 11 days before the election, and I've been saying, why couldn't they get this right the first time around? In other words, why do they have to go back and look again?
Exactly. And when you remember, go back to July 5th with the non-indictment of Hillary Clinton, it was the most scathing, excoriation of someone who was not guilty, apparently, or was not being charged anyway, that we've ever heard. And to think that whatever evidence they have uncovered now is so serious that they are going to reverse that decision, how bad must it be?
Well, you know, and this just... It's a very good point, Charles. And Harlan, I think that this basically just caters to all these feelings that frustrated voters have right now about the system being entirely, thoroughly corrupt. They feel like this is just, you know, big business and big politicians, and if your name is Clinton, you can get away with something that regular folks don't.
Absolutely. Look, it smacks of this belief in this country that's now substantiated by facts through WikiLeaks and through investigations like the FBI's, that there are two classes of laws in this country, and the Clintons get away with things that normal Americans would not. But if you listen carefully, I think what you're hearing around the country is the sound of champagne being put back on ice by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the mainstream media. Going into today, I think that they thought that this was locked up. And, you know, if they're really going to push this investigation...
She's already looking at cabinet members, right? I mean, Joe Biden. She's looking at for Secretary of State. Is that a little presumptuous, Harlan?
Absolutely. It was absolutely presumptuous. She's the subject of a federal criminal investigation. I believe that this is unprecedented in American history for the leading candidate in a race for the President of the United States, 11 days out, to be a subject of a federal investigation again of this magnitude.
I know. Chris, are you shocked? I mean, you're a Hillary Clinton supporter, but you got to be pretty shocked by this, right? I mean, I said at the top of the show, the FBI started doing the unthinkable. Everybody kind of figured, all right, it's done. And whether you thought it was right or wrong, regardless, it's done. And now it's being reopened all over again.
You know, no campaign wants something like this thrown at them 11 days before an election, and I'd be remiss to say that this is a good thing. But, you know, it also disproves the point that Harlan was just making about a rigged system. I mean, if it was a rigged system, do you think the FBI would be releasing this today, or wouldn't they wait 3 weeks and then release it? So, I mean, look, obviously, Hillary Clinton's getting a lot of scrutiny for that email server. I think too much scrutiny for that email server. But, okay, let's have it, and let's see what's in it, and let the American people
Why didn't they resolve this the first go-around? I mean, there was overwhelming evidence, even if you put aside the issue. Why was she using a private server for her own email communication? On the destruction of evidence piece, it was very clear. She got a subpoena from Congress for all of her emails, for her entire email archive, and she was able to pick and choose which emails she decided to hand over, and she destroyed the rest. And we now know there were work emails that were material to that federal investigation that she destroyed. She destroyed evidence material to a federal investigation, and the FBI knew it, and they decided not to take it to a grand jury. So if we're talking talking about how there's injustice in the system, there's a perfect example there.
You're shouting about it, you would think that she erased your email server. Look, here's the thing, Harlan. The Clintons have some explaining to do about the email server, but I don't think the American people care all that much about it. I think that this is a great thing for the base for Donald Trump, and this might get some more Republicans motivated to come out and vote for him.
If they don't care,
help him with
isn't
some
that kind of sad? I mean, shouldn't you care? Shouldn't you want to hold your lawmakers to a higher standard, Chris?
Yes, Trish, you should. But unfortunately for the Republicans in America in this election, they didn't nominate John Kasich or Marco Rubio or a plausible candidate. They nominated Donald Trump, and they are stuck with Donald Trump. And going forward, they're going to have to deal with that, and they're going to have to live with the fact that they gave this election away because they gave into conspiracy theories. I want to follow
up on that with Charles, because I've heard some Republicans say that as well, some sort of mainstream Republicans that feel like we could have won this election. They have said to me, with anybody else, Donald Trump was the one guy that was just basically going to step in it over and over again. And what I've wondered throughout all this, though, however, is I think that he was their only shot, their only chance at getting even close. And the reason for that is because he has brought in those disenfranchised voters. He has brought in the middle class. He has talked about trade. He has talked about economics in a way that the Republican Party in its traditional form has refused. Charles.
Yeah. Well, the Republicans would certainly be running a very different campaign right now if Donald Trump hadn't walked in and taken over the party. And that's obvious because, whether, as you mentioned, trade, immigration, all of these things. And I think it's a very valid point. I mean, he doesn't run a conventional campaign. I think it's safe to say that. But he is endlessly creative. He's got endless energy, and he sees things. He definitely understands how frustrated Americans are. And I've always said throughout this election that if in the final days of this campaign, if the campaign is going to be about Donald Trump, then Hillary Clinton wins. And if it's about Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump wins.
Interesting.
And we're going into the last 11 days, and this I think it's going to turn. I think the conversation is going to turn quite a bit and be about Hillary Clinton here.
You never know.
Unless there's any other tapes, lurking, and then you go back and you rehash that whole thing again. Although I would wonder, to a certain extent, Harlan, if the American public is sort of over that by now, in that, they have made this shift, if you would, back to the policy discussions regarding our economy, regarding international issues, regarding immigration, in a way that probably for him is important in this last final stretch.
Absolutely. Look, I think that the American people want a discussion of the substance. There are so many Americans that are really hurting out there financially. You look at all this news on Obamacare, and Donald Trump's been quick to capitalize on it. Premiums are going through the roof. People are being priced out of health insurance. And so there are real issues that the American people want to discuss. And as long as he's holding a light to that, I think that he stands a great chance on Election Day. My concern, though, is that, if we do get dragged back down into the discussion of the tapes, it probably still does have legs. Hillary Clinton, we saw on WikiLeaks, it sounds like they have 9 hours of tape of Donald Trump from years ago. And who knows what's in there and why they've been holding on to it for so long.
But if that was going to come out, wouldn't they have just tried to jump that?
I don't know.
About now? It's getting pretty darn close. Who's that? Is that Chris? Well,
yeah, well, if they've got it, now would be a good time to release it, change the subject.
By the way,
if I'm advising them, I say, let them have it.
Maybe they could play it on a big screen there in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I do want to remind our viewers we are waiting on Hillary Clinton to see how she responds to this bombshell news from the FBI. James Comey saying that they are reopening the case into her email server, and there she is, taken to the stage, given lots of hugs. Typically, in these rally events, what she does is she thanks everyone. She really pushes people to the down-ballot candidates. It's something that Democrats really praise her for. One might anticipate she's going to do that again.